welcome everybody to this latest edition of Unfinished Business. I'm your host, or actually co-host, Andre Joseph of Epyx Productions. And of course, our main man, the boss of the show, Mr. Jeff Gallashaw. Say hello.
Hey, everybody, how are you doing? Welcome to Unfinished Business.
Yes, and today we have, for our Halloween themed episode, we have a very special guest and somebody that I've actually had some admiration for quite some time, ever since I saw his film. So we have Mr. Armand Mastroianni. I hope I got that right.
Yeah, Mastroianni.
Okay. I've been trying to practice that for a while. So
It's all right. A lot of people get it wrong.
At least you tried.
So Armand, I'm just going to read your quick bio for you. So your directorial debut, of course, was the 1980 film He Knows You're Alone, which was also, as everybody probably knows or doesn't know, it was the screen debut of one Tom Hanks. And you've directed such studio films as The Celestine Prophecy, and the bulk of your career has been focused doing made-for-TV movies such as The Ring, First Daughter, One of Her Own, and Robin Cook's Invasion, and a number of television dramas such as Dark Shadows, Nightmare Cafe, the Friday the 13th series. And you also are the father of Paul, who's also pursuing a career in film. So that's fantastic to hear.
That's right. Yeah, Paul's actually working in the video game business right now.
Oh, nice.
He's writing. Yeah, he's writing one of the biggest games right now.
That's really awesome.
He's very happy. Yeah.
So yeah, let's get into it, Armand. So I got to ask this question for any filmmaker that comes on here. What got you started in making movies?
Well, I always loved telling stories. I always loved entertaining people. When I was a kid, I'd, tell stories to the relatives and stuff when we'd get together, and I'd be very imaginative. And then when I was in the Boy Scouts actually, and they used to always pick me to tell a campfire story at night, which would be a scary story. And then I started, I never went to film school or anything like that, but I just loved watching movies. I just was, so impressed with the idea of what could be on a screen and how you could convey messages through images. And I asked my dad to get me a not Super 8 at the time, it was 8mm camera. And it was the kind that you put a magazine in, and then you shoot one side, and then you take it out and you shoot the other side. And then I used to get the film developed, and I'd make little films with my friends. I'd just come up with ideas, write them down, and we'd shoot them. And I never stopped wanting to do that, because I loved the idea of just being very creative in storytelling, and visual storytelling especially. But it taught me something, because I didn't have the benefit of sound. I couldn't have actors speak to each other. So I had to convey messages through the way people behaved, reacted, or situations that I'd put them in. And hopefully the viewer would understand what's happening, And so that taught me something that later on I used a lot, which was, if you could show it, don't say it. If you can, say something visually, you don't have to say it verbally. You don't have to hit people over the head. People are smart; they get it. So, I started making a lot of 8mm films, and then Super 8, of course, and then 16mm, and then a couple of those films won awards, and one of them won a very big award at the Fordham University Film Festival. And prior to graduating college, I actually created a film. It wasn't a film school. It was Richmond College, and Staten Island Community College and Richmond College were a city university, and it's now called College of Staten Island. But they never had a film program or anything like that. And I started one there. I said, hey, we went to the dean. I said, a bunch of us are interested in, making films, and can we have a film club? And there was about 10 or 12 people involved in the club. So the way they gave us a certain amount of money, and I said, okay, everybody gets when we did a budget, 10 rolls of Tri-X reversal film, and each of you go off and make a movie. And we had rented a, oh God, what was it? I think it was a Bolex and a Ewer tape recorder, which do not sync, but I tried it. I tried to make a sound movie. But so anyway, everybody came back and nobody had any ideas. What are you going to make with your 10 rolls of film? What are you going to make with your 10 rolls? What are you going to, not nobody, well, I don't know. I was going to do some stop motion. I said, stop motion, that's not a movie. What do you know, don't you want to do something? So I said, well, it just turns out over the summer, I wrote a script and it's like 88 pages. And why don't we all get together and put all our film together and make this movie? You could produce it. You can do the lighting, you can do the sound, you can do and I'll direct it, of course. And, and we did. We made this movie and it became an event at the college because it was difficult to make because, as I said, we were trying to shoot sync sound, actors talking to each other. And the dialogue would always drift because, we used to have dialogue on a mag stripe and the film. So we'd run it through the moviola and eventually the sync would shift. So I'd have to cut frames out of the mag track to catch up to the picture or to add some to, so the voices would sync.
Right.
Was not an experience I would ever want to do again. But of course, today the difference exists. You could make a film on a cell phone. You can take a cell phone and just make a movie on it, which they've done. People have done it. And so when I talk to young students and I go to colleges and speak, film schools, I tell them you have that right in your hand right now, the ability to make a movie. You don't need to go out and rent cameras and buy film and all that stuff. You can, if you're creative, it's not about the equipment. It's not about the shots you make. It's about the story you tell. Because you can have the most beautifully shot film, but it makes no sense or doesn't relate to people. And who cares? People don't walk out of a theater saying, hey, did you see the way that Steadicam did this and that? Only film people would do that. Most people are either engrossed in a movie or love a movie and they watch it for a reason. Because it does something to them, it affects them, it scares them, whatever, it makes them laugh. So I always say to people, your job is to be a good storyteller. That's the job of a good director. Good director tells a good story. So
yeah,
I gave you all that.
No, everything you just said was giving me flashbacks of when I went to New York Film Academy, and everything you just said, like I had to use a Bolex, I had to use Tri-X plus X film stock, not have it exposed in the light, and having to edit on the Steenbeck tables. I had to do all that. And I remember my parents thought that's what's going to not make him be a filmmaker.
Yeah,
like,
well, interesting, because it's so nice that when you could actually handle film and cut it. And, today it's all electronic. You don't touch anything. It's all on a computer. It's all on, it's all digital. So, I mean, the idea of when I did He Knows You're Alone, that was a 35 millimeter film. That was my first movie to be shot in 35 millimeter. I was a nervous wreck when the editor was running through. They had a thing called a cutter. It was you just run a loop of film through it, and he'd put his foot on the thing, and it would go, and I'd say, oh my God, you're gonna ruin the film. You're gonna chop it up. And every time we'd make splices, sometimes the splices would break and stuff like that because you'd have to put tape on them, and then we'd make them again. And if we over spliced it, we'd have to order a new work print. But those are the experiences that I really relish because, I feel like I've gone through this whole journey like a lot of filmmakers before me who started out making films on celluloid. And now, of course, now if I make a film, the last couple of films I've made were all digital, we didn't, which allows you to actually become more indulgent and say, oh, well, keep it rolling anyway. Let's do it again. And, you can keep talking because you're not wasting film. When I first started shooting, these budgets were so low, the producers would say to me, we only have this amount of footage. You better judge how much you need per shot and all that stuff, and quick action, quick sticks. In other words, they put the slate in front of the actor and go, scene's already ready, take two, action, right away, so you don't burn all that film, and it was an experience, and I'm glad I went through it, because it certainly kept me in touch with the journey that other filmmakers had too, of going through making your film and watching it be cut together and all that stuff. I mean, you do the same thing today, but it's very different. And of course, in those days we didn't have CGI, and we didn't have we had to like do special effects, even a fade or a dissolve. We'd have to make I don't know if you remember making like using those grease pencil lines on the film, like to show that it's going to fade, one's going to fade right into the other, and how many 24 frame, 48 frame, So, and then we never knew what it was going to look like until we got a work print back, or they'd make a print of it and show it to us and show us the effect. But I kind of like doing, in-camera effects. I love that rather than CGI, because, Francis Coppola made, when he made that film Dracula, he did a lot of those in-camera effects, and they look fantastic. I marveled at that. I thought that was beautiful. It was just amazing. And I did a lot of stuff like that too when I was starting out too, because I did not have the abilities. I didn't have the advantage of saying, "Oh, don't worry, we'll CGI this or we'll CGI that," or I would come up with I would design a shot also to tell the story, because I wanted to connect these things. I wanted to make them seem seamless. Like I would say, as they're speaking, I want to slowly pan off, and as we come across this pillar in the room, I want a black card after it. So we pan right onto the black card and then cut. And then when we go to another location, I'd start on a black card and pan into it. So it looked like he's panning right into the new scene. And it was an in-camera effect. And I remember in another film that I did, Gone But Not Forgotten, I wanted to have the woman's face after she shoots her husband go right to the same exact face in the courtroom as she's sitting there listening to the judge and the sentence and all that stuff. And we matched. I said to the DP, I said, let's match exactly the frame and where her eyes are in the frame, and let's try to do that with the camera. It's almost like visualizing it and positioning the face, within the frame in the courtroom, so that when we did do the dissolve, it literally blended right in and it became the same face, but now months later in a courtroom. Wow, it worked. I mean, those were the kind of effects that I liked, but it was storytelling at the same time. I was telling the story of this woman's journey and how she hasn't abandoned this feeling. This feeling stayed with her. This feeling of when she killed her husband, she can't, forget it, because he was abusive and all that stuff. These are the things that I was very fortunate, when I made my first film, because not having the benefit of been in film, I've gone to film school and stuff, I was not familiar with the various lenses and what the lenses could do. And I learned on the set, which is amazing, what a 35 millimeter lens is going to do, how an 85 is going to make more flattering on a woman's face from far away, because it'll flatten it out a little bit. And if you went in real close with a wide angle lens, it's going to distort the faces. I mean, all those things are things you begin to learn as you're making as you're making films, because you're actually experiencing it. You're not picking up a book and reading, okay, this is what a 35, you're actually seeing it. And I used to invite all interns and from film schools on my sets to just observe and be there if they wanted to, or even work as PAs if they, because I always say the best experience is on-set experience. You learn, you see as problems arise, how you deal with them. You know, you
Yeah.
can see that, you know, the books are going to tell you so much, but the real life experiences are going to be the things you take. Oh, I saw this, you know, I saw what they did when they were running out of light, and how he combined 3 shots, and you know, and a lot of times I would talk to these young kids and I would say, listen, we'd set up a shot, I'd set up a shot, and then I'd say, okay, actors, go to wardrobe and makeup and get ready, and the lighting would start, you know. So I'd call the guy over, or a couple of guys, or whoever they're interning. I'd say, listen, what do you think? And they said, oh, you know, I saw the way you shot that there. I said, no, what do you think of the way we set up this last one? And they said, whoa, it was great. I said, no, don't tell me it was great. Tell me, how would you have done it? Would you have done it differently? And so one of them said to me, he says, well, maybe I would have put this over here and then have him walk over here. And she was already standing there. And I said, that's an excellent idea. We're going to do that. And all of a sudden, that person felt valuable. He felt like he's contributed something to the making of this film. Or conversely, I would say, if they would say, well, I would do this, this, and this. I said, now, what you've just done, think about it. You've created 3 shots to tell what I'm going to tell in one, by making this move to here and having this guy turn and then say his line, you know, and that's economy. And that's when you have to shoot quickly, because either you're losing the light or you're running out of time, and the days, you know, you've got more shots to make after that. So you have to be very clever when you become a filmmaker, and you have to be not only a good storyteller, and I keep repeating that, but you also have to know how to budget your time, and don't absorb yourself with too much. Don't make everything precious. Certain things you can just move on with. Like if it's a drive up, how many times are you going to shoot a drive up? I mean, you got it once, maybe you need it again, get it and move on. But some people, you know, they fall in love with the idea of, oh, look at me, I'm dollying into the headlight, you know, and all that stuff. But that's not storytelling. It's becoming self-indulgent. So those are the things that I love to share with filmmakers, you know, people who are aspiring filmmakers, at least.
Yeah, I'm already
You know, real
inspired already.
filmmakers already know what they're doing. So.
Well, that's an interest. Well, I'm just sitting here in awe, because it's like education in of itself a little, listening to you tell these stories and speak. So thank you. But this reminded me of one of my already questions I had about He Knows You're Alone. I know in the opening scene, which, you know, is brilliant in of itself, you know, and ahead of the times, with where you think we're watching a horror, we think we're watching the film, and then it ends up being, you know, they're watching a horror film, and then, you know, this whole elaborate, you know, girl watching the screen, and then eventually she's murdered. But also later in the film, you have a scene where it's the girl's friend, she's taking a shower, you know, obligatory full frontal nudity, and then she's like, so she gets out of the shower, she thinks she hears something, then she goes, smokes a joint, then puts on the headphones for the music. And, you know, it's like this whole big buildup. But with that scene, I noticed, I thought it was going to be like this whole big, you know, foreplay, action, and then death. And then it's like, okay, we're going into the foreplay, and then, you know, the kill. And I was just wondering, was that due to maybe a time constraint, or you figured, oh, I already did this in the beginning, let me not stretch this out anymore?
You know, it's interesting, because as I recall that it is sustained. There's a lot of cuts to the fish tank. There's a lot of cuts to her taking the headphones off and turning and looking behind her because she senses something. She puts them back on, and the music keeps building. And even though it's a sort of a love song, it's The Night Again, it's called, you feel the presence of this guy in the house, and you see a shadow coming up behind across the wall. I don't think it's quick when she puts the joint back in her mouth, and then a hand grabs her by the hair, and then you see the knife come across.
Yeah.
That's quick. But I think there's a pretty long time before that happens. I mean, that scene's relatively played out. From the point when you see that there's a knife missing in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, I mean, look, I'm going to be very honest with you. When I first saw that film, when I saw the completed film, I had seen it so many times, mind you, I'd cut it. at the Festival Theater in New York City. It was the night when all the people were arriving. I just kept sinking lower and lower in the seat going, this movie sucks. This is not scary. This sucks. I was listening to the playback, making sure the levels were right and all. I was so bored with it. But that night, literally the fire marshal came in and had to get people up because some people were sitting in the aisles. It was completely sold out. Wow. And the screaming that went on, I knew the film was going to be good. I knew it was going to resonate with audiences because I knew that night it validated the fact that I was able to speak to an audience, scare an audience, do what my job was in that film. And that made me feel great because it validated the conviction that I had that I wanted to be a filmmaker. But that afternoon, believe me, I thought it was over. I said, people are going to walk out of this. It's boring. It's not scary.
Well, it was probably, you were used to seeing it. Now you have all new eyes.
Yeah,
100 times. I knew every beat. I knew everything because I had to mix the film. I had to do everything. I cast the film. It was. But you're right. It's the thrill, the experience of. Oh, I'll give you a little side thing. When I was doing Tales from the Dark Side, one of the young interns that was like a driver and a PA, office PA, he came back and forth. I used to say, listen, you want to make movies someday? He says, yeah, I want to write. I want to, like to produce and write. And I said, well, you have any ideas? And we started kicking around some stuff. And he came up with this, he came back the next day, 2 days later with a little synopsis. And I worked on it with him. The two of us sat down. I said, I got an idea. Let's make this very Fellini-esque and bizarre, And he sat down and we wrote this thing. And I brought it to the producers of Tales from the Dark Side. And they loved it. And we got to make it. And I'll never forget, this is how I felt. So I saw this guy. I asked the office, I said, make sure he gets to come on the day. We're shooting the circus scene. We were shooting this one scene in a bizarre circus atmosphere. And I forgot his name. I think it was Lawrence. I said, send Lawrence. Why don't you send Lawrence over? Do you have any deliveries he's got to make? And they said, no, but we'll send him over. So I waited, and sure enough, we were getting ready to start shooting, and I saw Lawrence come in, and he had his envelope, he was making a delivery, and I waved to him, I said, and I could see he was standing off to the side, and I said, okay, we're going to shoot now, and here's the scene, we set up Dick Shawn was in it, and he was like he was biting his own teeth, he was like so excited, I understood that feeling that was going on inside of him. I could feel it because I said, I felt that when I was on the first time I stepped on my set. That was like, oh my God, I'm really doing this. It's not just a short movie I'm making a movie, and then to get validated right after it, the greatest thing in the world happened. MGM Buys the Film, one of the big studios. Because at the time Paramount had released Friday the 13th, and so MGM was looking for a film, and they loved it. They were blown away by it. And they flew us all out to California. They put us up at the Beverly Hills Hotel. And the next thing I know, I'm getting an offer to do a movie for MGM called A Stranger Is Watching, based on a book by Mary Higgins Clark. So they said, we're going to make, this is your next movie. We want you to make this one for us. I said, oh my God, I'm going to make an MGM movie. Well, they said, you already did. Well, we're distributing it. But then I got a telephone call, and William Friedkin wants to meet with you. I said, William Friedkin, the director of The Exorcist, The French Connection. Oh my God. Where is he? And they said, he's at Warner Brothers. And I said, how do I get there? So I seriously went over to see him. And I waited a couple minutes in his office. All of a sudden, his secretary said, he'll be right out. He's just finishing up a call. Door opened, and he's in this white jumpsuit. He comes out, and he gives me a big bear hug, and he says, your picture scared the shit out of me. I said, oh, my God. Thank you. And he said to me, come inside. Let's sit down and talk. He said, here. and he hands me a script. I want you to make this the night of the full moon. So I looked at it. I said, "Oh my God, what? You're not going to direct anymore?" And he said, "Yeah, of course I am." And he said, "But I'm going to produce a bunch of films, and I'd love you to direct this." And he said, "How about we have dinner tomorrow night? Can you read it by tomorrow night?" I said, "I'll read it right away." So he said, "Fantastic. I'll have my assistant call you and all that stuff." And well, I get to the parking lot. I can't even start the car. I have to start reading the script. I'm so excited. And I'm reading and I'm reading and I'm reading and I'm reading. And I'm going, what? This is horrible. This is, I know what he's doing. He's giving me a bad script to see if I know a good script from a bad script, right? So I started the car reluctantly, went home, and I finished the script. And I called the office and I said, "Hi, it's Armand for Billy." She says, "He's on the phone. You want to hold?" I said, "Sure." So I remember him picking up the phone and saying, "Hey, how you doing? You read it already?" I said, "I did. And what do you think?" "Well, it's pretty bad." I go, long dead silence. Oh, shit.
No, no.
What did I say? So he says, "Well, any script is fixable." I said, "Oh, yeah. I mean, but I was reading this and I thought," you thought what? I said, "Well, it's very much like the movie I just made." He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Well," he said, "Look, are we going to have dinner tomorrow night?" I said, "Yes, absolutely. I'm not going to pass that up." So sure enough, we went out to dinner and I started pitching him an idea that I had for a guy in a swimming pool, and the lights go out and he's all by himself, and then he gets pulled under and his ankle gets handcuffed to the bottom rung of the ladder, so that when he tries to pull himself up, his face is this far from the water, and only his arms are able to come up out of the water. He slowly drowns while his ankle is bleeding under the water. He loved it, loved it. And then I told him I had this scene in my head about the heroine is running up on the rooftop in a New York City tenements through all these bed sheets. Who hangs bed sheets at night? I do. Anyway, she's running, and at any moment the guy's going to jump out and get her. So that became the killing hour, and Billy Friedkin, financed it. He called my agent. I had an agent at the time. I was at the William Morris Agency, and he made that happen. And then just before we start filming, about 2 months before we start filming, he has a major heart attack. And he's out. And they called me. They said, he's not going to be able to move forward, but he wants you to have the script. He wants to give all the rights back to you. If you could set it up. And sure enough, the two guys who made He Knows You're Alone had made a fortune on it because MGM paid a lot of money for the movie. Said, "Hey, we want to make a movie with you." So we went and made The Killing Hour. But it was thanks to Billy Friedkin. I'm glad I didn't do that other movie for MGM because it turned out to be a really bad film. When it's strangers watching.
Yeah, so I have a personal anecdote about He Knows You're Alone. So for years, I knew about obviously the Tom Hanks part in the movie, but it's funny enough, my dad was the one who introduced me to this film because,
Oh, really?
yeah, because I live in Staten Island myself, and I produced a film right out of college where I kind of did what you did. I got locations based around people that my parents knew. I, had family friends help put up some of the money to do it, and I had my trials and tribulations shooting that film. So when my dad bought your DVD, he listened to your commentary track, and he told me what you went through was identical to the stuff that I went through on my first film. So it's like, okay, well, I got to sit down and look at this. And I was shocked looking at Staten Island in 1979, how much it's changed since then. And Amy's house in the film, that big white house you shot at, is the next block over from where I live on Ward Avenue.
Really? Ward Avenue. That's right.
The house is still there. It's the exact same.
Well, it reminds me of when I went up, when they were shooting The Godfather on Staten Island.
Yeah.
In 1971, I snuck out of school and I meandered my way through the extras. I saw these people were on waiting because everything was cordoned off, and they had built a phony front on the house outside to make it look like the mall in Long Island. You're familiar with the
Oh yeah,
Longfellow Avenue where they shot. And I remember going up there, and I had seen the day before in the Staten Island Advance a picture of a bearded guy with a scarf around his neck saying, "Director Francis Coppola sets shots for the filming. Paramount Pictures is filming The Godfather here on Staten Island," you know. And I was like, I gotta go. I gotta go. I have to be there. So I just meandered into the extra. And when we got up there, they put us all to one side, and Francis was speaking to Gordon Willis, and Gordon Willis was walking around looking through for the light. No, he says, "We're not going to shoot now, Francis. We got, oh, Gordon, what are you doing to me? Come on, we got to get going. We got to get going." So I said, I looked around, and Francis kind of meandered away by himself. I said, maybe this is a good time to talk to him. Of course it's not, you know, the guy's under pressure. I go over, I say, "Excuse me, can I talk to you for a minute?" He goes, "Yeah, what?" He said, "Listen," I said to him, I'm in school right now and I make Super 8 films and 16 millimeter films, and I really want to make movies. And is there any way in the world I could just stand here and watch a little bit?" And he said, "Yeah, yeah." And he walked away, and then all of a sudden somebody put their hand on my shoulder and says, "What are you doing here? Are you with the," he turned around, he says, "He's okay, he's with me." He had me sit next to him at the camera for the next 3 days. And I sat right here and he sat next to me, and there was a Mitchell BNC. They used a Mitchell BNC, and they were shooting Diane Keaton and Al Pacino without extras at this. They were looking at them this way. And then they turned over their shoulders the next day and had 300 extras, but they're shooting this way. And Diane Keaton is going, "I didn't know you." And there's one AD going through the area behind the camera going, "Yay, Johnny, yay, Johnny." So she's going, "I didn't know your father knew Johnny Fontaine." And I looked at Francis Coppola, and he kept going. And she's going, "I didn't know your father knew Johnny Fontaine." And he goes, and she's going, I didn't know your father knew Johnny Fontaine." He wanted that, but he's making faces at her, and I'm going, "Is that the way you direct? Jesus, I didn't know, And then I walked over to Marlon Brando, who was sipping, Stoli, and he had two little things in his ears. They weren't feeding him lines at the time. He had big, gigantic cue cards. Mm-hmm. But I remember saying to Marlon Brando about directing One Eye Jacks, and he says, "No, I'm not going to direct anymore. I'm not going to make any films. It's crazy business, But he would walk around and just mumble. He wouldn't say dialogue. He would go, and grab people's hands. And they looped him later on because, he wanted that kind of natural improvisational thing. The same thing like when he was talking to Michael in the garden, and he's an old man, and he's saying, "The one who's going to come to you is Bazzini. Oh, your kid reads the funny papers, huh?" And when he'd be looking at Michael, and then he'd kind of stare off, like collect his thoughts. And what he was staring off at were these giant cue cards, which are right there. And he'd go like this, "Huh? Your kid reads the funny papers, huh? Listen, the one who's going to come to you." And it made it so real. It made it look like he was thinking, he was having his moment, and then he'd reflect on what he was, what he wanted to say. It made it look very natural. So I said, "Look, if that's the way he works, it's great." But it was great. It was terrific. And I just was so impressed with how generous Coppola was. And then when he did, oh, look at this. When he did Godfather Part 2, they actually called me and said, "Come on down. Look at this. This is me on the set with Francis Coppola."
Oh my God.
That's me with the mustache.
Yeah.
And he actually said, "Come on down and come and enjoy." We're shooting this St. Rocco thing, and I was talking to Bobby De Niro and all. And then a couple of years later, Bobby De Niro, when I was doing The Killing Hour, came down to the Mayflower Hotel. Him and Joe Pesci came in, and they were watching us film. And I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, you guys want to be extras in this?" "Oh no, we can't do that. We can't do that." But it was a lot of fun, and the experiences I've had, working with people. I mean, I learned a lot on He Knows You're Alone. I learned a lot about, how to work with actors, and I used that later on. And And that's one thing I'd like to talk about is my approach to working with actors as opposed to um, some other directors and the way they work. A lot of directors choose to sit by the monitor and sit in a director's chair and look at a TV screen that shows what the camera is seeing. And some of them like to also shout out, hey, Andre, when you do that, make it funnier, you know, something inane like that, you know, which is not really a direction. Or Andre, listen, be nervous in this scene, or be funnier in this scene, or do this. And now what you've just done is you've announced your intentions or your direction to the actor across a room filled with people. And all of these people are watching to see if Andre is going to do it or not do it. Or am I going to yell cut? Or is this director going to yell cut and say, do it again? You got to make it funnier. Come on, can't you be funnier? You know, I mean, it's the worst kind of intimidation. That doesn't put an actor at ease. That makes an actor become defensive and become tightened up because, you know, you've been criticized. My approach is to, and I've done this in a lot of acting classes when I work with actors in acting classes, is I go directly up to the actor and I take the actor away from the other actors and I talk to him or her and I'll say, listen, I think there's an opportunity here. Or Andre, in this scene, I want you to remember one thing. You left your car double parked by a pump downstairs, by a Johnny pump downstairs, a fire hydrant rather, and but you don't want anybody in the scene to know that. So, what is that making you do?
That's probably going to make me more comfortable to know I could do the part at that moment.
No, it's going to make you. No. I'm saying as an actor, you're going to interpret that feeling of, oh my God, I left my car is running at double parked. I'm going to get a ticket. Oh my God, or get towed.
That urgency, right?
There's going to be an urgency. Now, if I say play the scene with urgency, that's no good because that's a result. But I'll give you something to play. I'll give you something to think about, something that's very playable. Like another time I had a scene where these two people are sitting on a park bench and they're supposed to be very uncomfortable with each other, but they like each other, but they're too shy to let each other know. So they sat there and they played it. You know, one was looking this way and the other one was looking this way, and they played the scene. And I did this as an exercise in class. And I said to the after they played the scene, I asked people, "What do you think?" And they said, "That was okay." They played the scene. I said, "Okay." I walked up to one. I said, "Come with me. When you were a little girl, there was a fire in your house, and you ran in at the last minute to grab your doll, and your face got burned over here. Now it's healed over many years later, but this, you think that this is the ugly side of your face because there's scar. You think there's scars on it, okay?" She went, "Okay." Took the guy on the other side and I talked to him and I said, when you had an accident when you were a kid and you know there was glass and you got cut here on this side, but it healed over and nobody really notices, but you do. You're aware of this side. So now he said, okay, I'll use that. And they sat down and did the scene again. And instead of playing it like this and like this, they played it kind of like, do you ever like to go to the lake or see something? They never quite turned their faces. So I got what I wanted, which was, and then the students in the group said, "Wow, that changed the whole dynamics of the scene." You could feel that they were shy and they were uncomfortable with each other without telling them, "You're shy, you're uncomfortable." You can't give result-given directions. You have to find a way to make an actor play something. Like another thing you could do is you could tell, say you want to have a little tension in a scene, or you want the feeling between two people to be a little bit, you don't want to give them the result. You want to tell them, listen, tell the guy, listen, you're secretly in love with her. Even though you're with your wife at the table, you are secretly in love with that woman across from you, who is your best friend's wife. And nobody else at the table knows this, just this actor. So you're going to see a change in what this person was playing. Did you know that in the movie Ben-Hur, they, the Gore Vidal wrote a lot of the script, and he said that Masala was secretly in love with Ben-Hur. He loved him physically, emotionally, everything. But they could never tell Charlton Heston that, because Charlton, oh no, I'm not going to play that. But you could see in the movie, it's in the DVD too, they talk about it, how the longing, the looks between them, and then when Ben-Hur turns on him, and Masala is so damn jealous, he puts the whole family into the leper colony there. He puts them in those caves. But I mean, that's what a director needs to do. A director needs to communicate ideas and suggestions. You never go over and say, play it like this, say it like this, do it like that, because the actor always has a chance to improve upon what you may have and might even give you something more. So that's been my experience in working with actors, and I love it. And I know actors like working with me because I'm very generous with that. And I mean, if they are way off base, I'll bring them back, but I'll bring them back slowly. I'm not going to say, no fucking way, you're not going to do it that way, because that only creates tension, and you knock heads with somebody and they're never going to be willing to do it. You want to make them feel like they're contributing. You want to make them feel like they're giving you something, and they will feel in turn like they are contributing. That's the same with the crew. Make everybody feel valuable.
Well, that's the amazing thing about your filmography, is that you look down the list and you've worked with almost everybody in the business, going as far back as your very first film. And just looking at that, not just Tom Hanks, but you had Don Scavino, you had Paul Gleason, Steve James had a small role in this movie, James Reborn, a lot of actors, unfortunately, are no longer with us, but we've grown up seeing these guys in all these different films. And of course, your lead actress, we just talked about 3 O'Clock High the other day, and remember her from that movie. It's like, oh yeah, that's the hot teacher from that film. Yeah. So it's cool seeing her in this. What was it like to work with those actors when they were unknown, and especially Tom Hanks in particular?
Well, I'll tell you something. Tom was amazing, because he walked in and he didn't even end up reading for me. We started talking and I got so involved. I just liked him. There was something about him. There was such a warmth about him that it was just genuine. I said, this is who this guy should be. And I went in to sell him to the producers. I took his picture, which was a snapshot and a resume that just had some schoolwork on it. He wasn't even in the Screen Actors Guild or anything. And they just said, fuck him, he's nobody. We don't want this guy. I said, but I really do it. And we argued. Finally, listen, he's going to cost us $345 or $245 to Taft Hartley, because we got to get him in SAG and blah, 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 blah. But he can only play the supporting role. You can't put him in as the lead. I went, all right. But anyway, I asked him to stick around. I said, listen, do you have any place to go right now? And he says, no. I said, would you do me a favor? And there's other actors coming in. Would you mind reading with them when they come in to read? I mean, I've been, because we couldn't afford to have somebody there, so I had to read with the actors. And when I'm reading, I'm not really listening and looking. I'm trying to get the actor so the actor stays on cue. So he did that for me, and that was so nice. And on the set, he was a lot of fun. We joked a lot, and I let him ad-lib the thing, a few lines here and there, and he was just very nice. And as most of the cast was, we had a lot of fun. There wasn't anybody on that movie that I, locked horns with. I mean, just once maybe with the AD, because he went over and he was starting to tell the actresses, like, I would direct you differently in this scene, because he wanted to be a director, and when that came back to me, I walked up to him, I said, that's not cool, man. You don't do that. You make your own movie. Go make your own movie. I'm not going to come on your set and tell people what to do. Oh, well, I just thought I had ideas. I said, well, why don't you bring them to me? Why do you go to the actors? It erodes the confidence they have in themselves and in me. You can't do that. So that was the only experience that I would say negative. It wasn't negative. I think it was just somebody who so badly wanted to do what I was doing and didn't have that opportunity. But, He Knows You're Alone was a lot of it was images that I kept coming up with and ideas that would come up in my head. I'd say like, how am I going to make this scary? What's going to make, how is this going to be scary? And I always thought that the silence and the idea that we know something the character doesn't know is always more powerful. And it keeps the audience on edge. It's the old Hitchcock thing of saying, put a bomb under the table, then pull back, and suddenly people come in and start having a meeting about baseball or something. And people are saying, get out, because the bomb is going to blow up. But you know, it's that idea. I tried to use that all the way through the film. Even like when the professor goes down to the basement because the lights go out because the guy threw the light switch. And I said, you know, there's got to be things in this basement that scare us, like just an old pair of shoes behind a, you know, a curtain. Looks like somebody's standing there, you know, or like it's the way you move and the slowness of the camera. And sometimes the amount of time you spend on an image can be very unnerving. You know, if you hold on something long enough. And the one thing I learned on that movie was the tighter you go, the scarier it is, because the audience is only seeing this much. When you're way back, oh, they see there's nobody else in the room. But when you're tight, suddenly a hand could come in and grab you, or you know, that would make you jump, because that's the power of the frame, the power of the image.
Well, going back to what you were talking about with directing actors and being a little more hands-on with them and, you know, with suggestions and creative, that is the one thing I've noticed with your feature film work, is that, you know, there's great visuals and all that, but I noticed that through the films, no matter what happens, you care about the characters more when you're watching it, because it's like, you know, even the most minor character, you're like, either, oh, I'm sorry to see them go, or you feel like there's something there or a backstory, especially like in The Killing Hour. You know, you have, you know, the lead detective, but then you have somebody like John Polito's character who you feel like, okay, maybe there's something more to him, because, you know, he doesn't say much, but he's in all these scenes. Same thing with Joe Morton. And I can say I really appreciated that with, you know, most of the feature film works that I was able to see that you had made. Even like with the Supernaturals, and you know, where you have Nichelle Nichols, you know, you have Maxwell Caulfield, and even LeVar Burton. You know,
I love LeVar.
I love it.
But you know, those guys I work with, I brought them all back. I worked with John Polito so many times, and I brought Joe Morton back, and I just love these people. You know, when you work with people over and over, you know, even for the first time, I was warned about working with a particular actress. They said, "Oh God, don't take that movie. She's horrible. She's the worst person in the world. She's a horrible person. She's a big star." And I went, "Really?" And you know, I said, I want to make that decision for myself, though. You know, let me. We hit it off so nice. I mean, it was. We went out to dinner so many times together. She came around with her. She was dating somebody at the time, big star too. And he came to the set. It was, "Excuse me, sir." Can I said, "Oh, please, no." I said, "You sit in my chair. Sit in my chair." You know, it was just a whole different experience, and it comes from the way you treat people. And if you set yourself up as a dictator and you're gonna, this is the way it is, and they're gonna always be, you know. They're going to be defensive, and they're going to, you know, hit back at you. But if you're nice to them and they like you and they trust you, they open up, because they want to be good, and they want to do a good job. And you know, that's why I love bringing back actors. I love working with them again and again.
So I have a business related question for you, because obviously your career spans like with over 60 films, and I'm sure there's more counting, plus your television work. And you know, like I'm always seeing these Lifetime movies. I spent a lot of last year in the pandemic watching some of the films you've done, and a lot of like old made for TV movies I never knew existed. And it always begged this question for me, like, what does it take to get a job making movies for a company like Lifetime or some of the other networks where they're constantly pumping out new films like almost every week? And it seems like I want to get into that, you know, like I want to be able to like work nonstop like that. So how does that work?
I'll tell you, First, when I was making the independent films like Supernaturals and Killing Hour and He Knows You're Alone and Distortions, and then you know, before I started doing Friday the 13th, which was a DGA show, because it was Paramount Television, I was very, people had seen the stuff I've done, they'd seen my films. And I know I got Supernaturals because Joel Soisson and Michael Murphy loved The Killing Hour. They watched it and they said, "Oh, I want to get this director to do the Supernaturals." So everything was a referral. And my entire career has been that. If you go through, you can see I've worked for the same people. Like I did 7 films for this guy, this producer, this company. I did 8 films for this one, 9 films for this one, 17 for one other company, Hallmark and Lifetime. Well, what happens there is word gets out, and a lot of it is through actors. When I got my very first television movie, it was called When No One Would Listen. It was Michelle Lee and James Farentino, a story about spousal abuse and about a woman who takes her kids and escapes and goes to a shelter. I got that because Michelle Lee had heard from other actors who had worked with me in other films. They all talk and they said, "Oh, you want to work with this? You got to work with this director. You love him. He's so easy to work with. He's such a collaborative person." And she went to CBS and they said, "No, we don't want this guy. He hasn't done television movies. He does features. We don't want this guy. He's going to, bankrupt us because of it." Well, she fought, and she said, "I'm only going to do it if he's the director." So it happened that way. And once I did that one, and that was a very successful film, got tremendous reviews. I got really great reviews in Variety and all that stuff. Then, of course, "Oh, why don't you do another one? Why don't you do another one? Why don't you do another one?" And the same with Lifetime. I mean, it all came out of referrals. People kept saying, "Oh, get this director, get that director, get this director, get that director." It was never like I had to go apply for a job. They would come to me. In fact, I turned down a lot of stuff too because I was doing 4 a year, and that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I mean, and some of them were like The Ring and Invasion. Those were miniseries. Those are like 180 days, and from beginning to end, it was like really long shoots and stuff. And you'd get that through. You get that through referrals, and through the network gets to know you. And in fact, one of them said, "Oh, he's the go-to director. You got to get him. You got to get him. You got to get him." So, and it's only because if you do good work, it speaks for itself. And if the film gets a good rating or something, they want you back. And if you're easy to work with and good to work with, and you turn out a good product, and the crew and the producers on it say he's responsible, he understands how to watch out for the not going over budget and stuff like that. So, I did a lot of stuff in Australia. I did stuff in Czech Republic, France, Switzerland, Italy, all over the United States, Canada. I lived up in Canada for a long time. I was doing Nightmare Cafe with Wes Craven. Mm-hmm. And Wes, Wes asked me about that opening scene, and He Knows You're Alone. He says, "I want to use it in Scream 2. Yeah. I want to have the girl, talk. They want him to talk about this stabbing." I said, "Sure, go for it." And we did this show called Nightmare Cafe. It was just Wes and myself. He'd do one, I do one. He'd do one, I'd prep, and he'd shoot. I'd prep. Each episode, and we used to go out to dinner. And he goes, one night he says to me, he says, "I really envy you." I said, "You envy me? Why?" And he goes, "Because you have done a wide range of films. You've done horror, you've done action, sci-fi, love stories, thrillers, westerns. You've done all these kinds of movies, and I'm stuck in the horror genre. I try to make one film, Music of the Heart, with what's her name?
Meryl Streep.
Meryl Streep. and nobody went to see it. Nobody cares about Wes Craven doing a romantic or a story about a music teacher. Whereas I never really got pigeonholed as a horror director, although all my first films were really horror films and thrillers. I was able to differentiate. And one of my favorite directors is William Wyler. I really admire him because he made such a diverse, he's got such a diverse body of film. I mean, The Best Years of Our Lives, The Heiress, Ben-Hur, Funny Girl, The Collector. I
Yes.
mean, what great movies. And he was not even he was, they used to call him 40 take Willie or 50 take Willie, because he could just say, do it again, do it again. What do you want, Willie? What do you want me to do different? Just do it again, just do it again. He'd want to wear them out so that they would just relaxed into playing their roles. But you know, I'm not a big, I don't do a lot of takes. I mean, obviously when you need to, you have to, but I don't do them just for the sake of doing them because little thing might change. Because I've always been aware of the fact that, you know, I have to be responsible to a budget and to fit into a certain amount of time to accomplish stuff. And I mean, who knows? God knows. He Knows You're Alone was the biggest test of all, because they had another guy standing on set, which I didn't even know about, a director friend of theirs who was on set, who I've become good friends with since, ready to step in if I screwed up, because they didn't know if I could do it. These guys had seen a couple of shorts that I made and took a chance on me. They put up their own money. And it's interesting. It's very interesting how you know, you evolve in this business, and you could also get the reputation of being a really bad person, you know, that nobody wants to work with you. There are some directors that have that reputation. And you know, I just love it so much, and I love what I do, that I think I let that out. So everybody feels it when they're around me. They feel that, you know, we're loving this. We're having a blast doing this film, even though it's tense and you know, we've got a schedule to make. But
Yeah, I know we're getting a little bit short on time here. So Jeff, did you have any last questions?
Not really, because just through just listening, he's answering most of my questions. Thank you very much. I guess one that you kind of answered, I was going to ask you, do you have a favorite genre to direct? But it seems like with you, again, it's more about referral, but also, is it just whatever story you get to tell?
yeah, yeah. If the story's good, you know, like I did a film which really did well, and it was I never thought I would do this kind of film, but it was those inspirational films. You know, it was like a story of a female Job, story of Job who's given plague after plague by God, and you know, sort of a it wasn't based on Job, but it was a story about this woman who is plagued by all these terrible things that happen to her in her life, and her commitment to God and her belief in God. I mean, she questions it a couple of times, but at the end, it kind of, and it was a beautiful story, and people love it. They write to me all the time, said it's one of my favorite films. I watch it over and over again. Brings tears to my eyes, especially at the ending. And one of my favorites that I made was The Ring, because I enjoyed the period. I enjoyed, you know, I turned it down. I literally turned it down. NBC, it was 200-page script because it was a miniseries. And my agent sent it to me, and I had just finished I did 4 virus movies. I did Virus, Pandemic, Invasion, and Fatal Error. So, and Pandemic, by the way, was a big hit when the pandemic started on Amazon. That's a big miniseries with Faye Dunaway and you know, all those people. But anyway, he sent me the script of The Ring, and I remember saying, I don't even want to see, I don't want to read it. I'm so tired right now. I was in my hotel room, and I said, pass on it. My agent said, read it. I said, I just don't want to. Anyway, I was laying in bed, and I grabbed that big, like a telephone book. And I opened a page one, it said 1933, Berlin. Hitler is just coming to power. And I'm going, ooh, ooh, and I'm flipping the pages and I'm going, this is good. This is, and then of course, it was a amazing story. Written by Danielle Steele of all people, and I didn't want to do it because I thought it was going to be just a big romantic tale, and it wasn't. It was a story of a family and separation, and I got to work with Nastasia Kinski, who was a major star, and I just was in love with her. I mean, she was so beautiful, so interesting to work with, and well, you know, it's like, what are your favorites? It's like asking sometimes, who's your favorite child of your children? You know, I love the process. I love the whole making films, the storytelling. How we started talking about storytelling, and that's what it's about. So most of the people that watch this podcast are they filmmakers or?
Yeah, I would say it's a lot of filmmakers, cinephiles
fans.
like us. Yeah, film fans who just like to hear our thoughts on not just modern films, but also a lot of the classics that tend to get lost in the shuffle, and you only find them like in the back pages of like Epyx channel or Stars. So we try to like cover all that ground for sure.
Well, if there's anybody out there that's interested in making a film, you have this in your hands. You can go out and make your own movie. Try it. You might like it.
So I just have one last question before I let you go. Have you ever been approached to do a sequel to He Knows You're Alone because of the way it was open-ended, or have you been ever approached about doing a remake of it?
Both. Yeah. New Line Cinema and I forgot who the other company was. But I mean, and then some people have sent me ideas of, you know, what could the sequel be? Well, the sequel is, you know, Marvin goes nuts, or Phil becomes the killer now because he's the one who she jilted, and but you know, it just felt. I kept asking myself, like, what would I do with this to make it different and not just be a continuation of, like, you remember when they did When a Stranger Calls?
Mm-hmm.
Carol Kane getting the telephone calls. I thought that was brilliant. The first 20 minutes was because he had made that as a short, and that worked as a short. But then the rest of the film became a police story. And then when they made the second one, When a Stranger Calls Back or A Stranger Calls Again, I forgot what it's called. It doesn't work. And it's the problem that happens with when you have, like, for example, when I first saw the Blair Witch Project, I thought it was very innovative. I thought, wow, this is interesting. Found footage, the whole thing, blah. But then it got so overdone. I mean, everybody was doing that. Then they started making Paranormal Activity and all that stuff. And the problem is, it's hard to keep that tension and that level up there as you did in the first one, because you know you're retelling the same story. You're gonna, you know, they almost know what to expect. So I would have almost preferred to have done it. Luckily, it hasn't happened, but I would have almost preferred to have had a completely different script. You know, want to make another horror thriller like that? Yeah, sure. Let's tell something different.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so Armand, I really appreciate you coming on.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
It's been educational for me. It's really like a good refresher for myself.
Definitely.
Do you have anything you'd like to plug or any social media for people to follow you?
You know, I'm working on a few projects right now that are, you know, in various stages. Nothing that's eminent, about to shoot, because, you know, with this pandemic and everything, you know, it's been so hard. And I'm comfortable just continuing to develop stuff. I never want to stop. I mean, I'm not going to say like, okay, I've done it, but then no point. I just think I'm always
perfect
a great
attitude
person. I always want to keep going. I love it so much. Yeah.
I'm glad you still have that spark after all these.
Yeah.
I really admire that. I find that
definitely.
inspirational without a doubt.
Yeah.
So again, Armand, thank you for coming on to the show. And
thank you very much.
My pleasure, guys. See you at the movies.
Yes.
I can't wait. And